with the men, there was also a idea to go ahead and have the real men talk. So that's what we're doing tonight. And again, so we do have an agenda, and it's going to be clean conversation of hopefully facts, as you may have, to talk about your different. It's not about party. It's about what, and it's not opinions as well. We're not going to do opinions. We're not going to be looking at the spiritual beliefs, but we're going to look at, again, what is important to you as it relates to your political view. And so I'm going to go ahead and allow both Mr. Charlie and Meredith to also introduce and give their thoughts.
Hey everybody, Andre Charlie, and it's my first time participating, but I appreciate being here. I've been a part of group sessions and settings, been a therapist as well. So we have certain guidelines and certain ground rules that we like to follow and have this conversation going. So I will turn it over to Reynard and he will go over those.
Absolutely. Okay, sweet. I'm not muted. All righty. So, of course, I am Reynard Meredith. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Oakland County, Michigan. I believe this is my second time being a part of the Real Men Talk. The first one was a long time ago, so thank you for having me back. Again, this is going to be a conversation about just, the political views and the temperature of what's going on. We want to provide everybody we want to be providing with like facts. Some of the house rules that we have here are going to be just for being mindful to be respectful of everybody. Everyone has their own thoughts and their own choices, and we are well aware that everyone is going to make their own choices once they get into their booth. So we're just really wanting to have a conversation about facts. The other thing is we want to make sure that we're giving everyone a chance to speak. We want to make sure that we're not just cutting anyone off. Just being mindful, having a realistic conversation and being mindful of everyone's time. If there are any questions or any things like that, you can put them into the chat box, but just making sure that the chat box is really used specifically for conversations pertaining to the conversation that we're having. I think that is about it. If you have a question, because everyone will be muted until when someone else is speaking, everyone else will be muted. And so when you have a question or you have a comment, if you could just raise your hand and you will be asked to unmute yourself or you will be unmuted. So we're just really going to give everybody a chance to speak and to, share their thoughts. But that is all that I have on my end. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jane.
Okay, thank you, Reynard. And so also for anyone that has used Zoom and anyone that has not used Zoom, there are controls at the bottom of your Zoom that will allow you to raise your hand. And so that will be please be mindful of that. And we want to make sure that we give everyone opportunity as well. So you probably will be given a notification of you have about 1 more second or two. And then your mute is going to go on so that someone else that has had their hand raised for a moment can also give their thoughts. And so we'll begin with even if looking at many of you may have received what possible discussions we were going to look into, and it is Vice President Kamala Harris as well as former President Donald Trump. And we're looking at past, present, and future, and any concerns as well as thoughts that you may have and that you want to give. We want to hear them. So anyone that wants to go first, you can, please do.
Uh-oh. Where is it? So, I mean, for me, what the one thing that I can say is that I was really happy that this particular election they allowed for a lot of the like early voting, voting. You could vote, you know, early in person, or you could do the absentee ballot. So I was able to get my votes off like 2 weeks ago, and to be able to go in and look on the website to make sure that my ballot was counted. So I was really happy about that, to just avoid standing in those long lines early in the morning or even late at night. So that's my initial input that I'll put out there. Did anybody else have an opportunity to vote early? Okay. Absolutely.
No, I did do the absentee ballot, so I will be completing that and taking that in. So that's something we're going to do. Anybody who did not register to vote, you can register to vote at your at various registration sites that are still available until November 5th. So you can go in and do that as well if you have not registered.
Exactly. Thank you, Andre, for that. And I am noticing a Ferguson, looks like a name. OGM, our Ferguson had a hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I voted. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yes, I voted absentee myself. And just like the brother just mentioned, it's so important that I was able to go online and to make sure I registered, because that's historic right there. Now it keeps the election honest, you know, so the American people won't feel like they votes don't matter when you can go online and see that your vote actually mattered because it's counted. So that was huge for me.
Very. And thank you for exercising your right
Thank
on
you.
that.
We have a hand raised for Robert.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. First off, I'd like to start off by saying good evening to the kings and queens on this Zoom. And the fact that it's 7 o'clock on a Monday and we're taking time out to join in on this type of setting to where we get to bring things to the table. Dr. Jan, you know, I have a lot of respect and admiration for you, Queen, and appreciate what you're doing, bringing us together in this forum. So we definitely appreciate that. One of the things I will say is, of course, the people are voting right now. Like has been mentioned, the early votes are getting out there, and then folks are doing the mail-in ballots. I don't know if people are aware, but there was a story out of what is this, Washington and Oregon. So I'm assuming Washington State. So they have the drop boxes for the ballots, and somebody right now they're tying it to arson. So they're setting these ballot boxes on fire. It says that hundreds of ballots were destroyed in Washington and they damaged 3 in the state of Oregon. So as you know, those 2 states are north and south of one another. And they're starting this stuff this far. Well, we're not even far out, but prayerfully, this is not the prelude to things to come. And I'll just end it at that, letting you know, if you have the opportunity to take your ballot in, that would be the suggestion. Take it in and make sure that it's counted. That the ballot boxes are good, but when things are this disruptive and so much unforeseen potential chaos, better to be safe than sorry. I'll end it right there.
Thank you, Robert. And so I appreciate how important it is to really look at this time as I don't think anyone is on here that has not had experience with voting before. So you know that this is the time. You know, it's every 4 years that it's been. So it's really not your first rodeo.
Yes, my lord.
So we just have to do what we have to do for the moment. And make sure that you get that on. So I do want to move on to some of the areas of just finding out what is concerning what you've seen in the past. So we're going to start with that, of seeing both sides, just your understanding of what's important to you. I'll be the first to say, I'll just give you that my concern is about mental health around infant mortality, and how important that is to me financially, as well as
Lots of it.
contribution, lots of it I'm hearing.
I don't want a whole lot of rice, but the black beans is important. And
Excuse
one
me.
piece of rice is fine.
And Martin, can you mute yourself?
Can you make? Yeah. So financially, what I've seen in the past, from the former president, is there were funds that were not really attended to as far as given to the mental health arena. But I also saw in the Biden administration where there was allocated funds that were given. And then Vice President Harris, she signed a bipartisan bill for it to also it was more or less 85 million. And I can put some facts in the chat as well, so you guys can also further look that up. But yeah, so far, just to start off, I'll say that looking at past, and then we'll look further into current at it. So anyone else want to start? Let me grab my notes. Here does not.
Brother, pronounce your name for me, Danzler. When you're
Oh, I think John Newby was unmuted first.
Oh.
Dr. Newby there.
Okay. Hey, well, thank you, Janice. And certainly I don't want to interrupt anyone else that may have had put up their hand to speak. But first, let me just comment or make a comment, here just in general. That yes, Janice, Dr. Jan is my sister, and certainly I want to make sure that I show my support and my love, for her, and hosting such an important topic to discuss. Originally, just being totally honest and frank, I was not going to join this type of platform. I reside out of Michigan. Not that matters. I reside in a state that's a large predominance of Caucasian. I'm from Detroit. My home, and I truly love Detroit, but I live in Maine right now. And as you can imagine, here in a state like this, I stand out. But I think what really stands out about an election like this is that there's no one on this call, at least in just looking, and I'm not aging anybody, but it's no one on here that was not around during probably the most historic time that occurred in our lifetime when we elected the first Black president of the United States in 2008. Okay. And he represented very well. And he made us all proud. I mean, I don't know, speaking for myself, but the night that he was elected, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes, honestly, because just the sense of pride. But then instantly, I went to, God, please protect this brother. Please protect this brother. Now, we're about to enter into another historic time where we're on the cusp of electing the first woman, but not only just the first woman, but the first African-American woman. And what I would encourage everyone to do is to just have that same sense of pride and representing, but just pray for her safety and for the safety of all of us, because there's clearly an agenda by the right to try to discredit her, try to discredit what she stands for, try to discredit our race, and she's going to be making history, and we're living through history. So I hope that we all take advantage of the fact that with us living through a time like this, I mean, because when you think of our ancestors, they never would have imagined a time such as this. But we're experiencing two of these historic, non-thought of events in our lifetime. And it's going to be important that we represent ourselves. So it's important for us to lift up those underlings to make sure that they recognize how important this time is for them and that they make the best of this opportunity and see a brighter future for themselves. And I would encourage also for us to support each other through all of this, because it's going to be important. There's some that are divided. Some believe that this is maybe not the right time, but I said it is definitely the right time. In fact, it's overdue for us to see these types of events in our lifetime. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing her in the White House. Jan, I just wanted to make that as a comment because this is an historic time that we can't waste this historic event, and it's going to be important that we just all represent properly and encourage all of our brothers and sisters to do the same. So that was my only comment right there.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thanks.
Okay, Brother Dantzler.
Yes. Once again, I'd like to just take the time out to say good evening to everyone. Dr. Jan, it's an honor and a privilege to take the time out to come on this network this evening and speak to something that's very sensitive across the country in regards to politics. Me, myself, I'd have to beg the difference. Politics, I'm finding it's something that's very, very sensitive. And being a minister of the gospel, I understand how important politics is and how we're supposed to separate church and state when it comes down to politics. And if I had to be honest, I've lost a lot of friends because of this elections or a lot of associates because they disagree. Me, myself, outside of the fact that Kamala Harris being a woman of color, I don't think she would be the vote for me. The reason I don't think she would be the vote for me is because of my own personal experience up under Kamala Harris administration. At one particular time, I lived in California, and my daughter's grandfather did 21 years in prison behind a nonviolent offense. He got his third strike and did 21 years in prison behind stealing a flashlight. I don't think I could vote for Kamala Harris because of the fact that me, myself, being a man of the cloth, understand the covenant that God gives between a man and a woman. I understand Obama, I am Black and I am proud. So I'm not a racist because I'm Black. But being a man of color for the first Black president, and then to turn around to endorse same-sex marriages, I think that's a covenant between a man and a woman. And definitely also whenever it comes down to abortion, those type of things alone right there, when it comes to abortion, when it comes to same-sex marriage, when it comes to mass incarceration for as men and women of color is concerned, is something that she's got a track record of. So to me, it's the lesser of two evils. I'm definitely not jumping on the bandwagon for as Donald Trump is concerned because he showed his track record, and I think he's more of a dictator, and he scares me because he conducts himself like a modern day Hitler. I don't think he's one for the people, but I'm really kind of independent right now. And I really haven't I would love to, she's polished, and a lot of times politicians are polished. She's polished, so she knows what to say to the people. Yeah, I'm going to give you what you want, so you want what I have to give. But once you get up in that White House and you look at your administration for the Obama administration, and then going all the way back to the time that she was in California for his mass incarceration for his men of color, it scares me. It really does scare me, and I'm not buying the fact that I'm Black and I'm proud. That means nothing to me. So that's just where I'm at. I'm really kind of independent still, and it's the lesser of two evils, if you ask me.
Okay, thank you, Troy.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, can I speak to that? Because is this like a back and forth discussion platform? Is that what this is?
Well, we're talking about past. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still
Okay.
talking about past right now. We haven't
Okay.
moved on to the current.
Okay, well, yeah, because I love conversation and stuff, and certainly, brother, appreciate you being a man of the cloth. I mean, clearly, in your role, as a man, that gospels to those. I mean, you know that people come in and they come to the church for salvation, right? And people come in there because we're all sinners, right? And I don't know necessarily that we hold anyone's past um, transactions in life and what they've done, as an opportunity to prevent them from moving forward and making a change. I think, and I hear you on just being black. This isn't about just being black. I think that what I look at personally when I look at a situation like this is I look at right and I look at wrong. Clearly, this other candidate is wrong. He's a racist, fascist. We all know this. We all know this. He said it. He showed himself to us before. And I'm not falling for the fact that because I'm just a black man and I'm voting for another person because they're black. What I'm voting for is right and for wrong. And I believe that there can be change, and we can vote that out. We can vote out those changes that we don't necessarily agree with. And I'm sorry about your brother and living in California, but would you have the same opinion had your brother or you not lived in California, and also being a man of the cloth where you're forgiving people and turning people to the Lord, on a daily basis? I mean, would you have that same opinion if you weren't necessarily a man of the cloth?
If if I may interject, I may respond, sir. I don't hate the sinner, I hate the sin. Just because I serve a whosoever God. So, I mean, homosexuality, that's been around since the beginning of time, so that's nothing new. But a covenant is something between a man and a woman. I'm not going to endorse it. I even have a daughter that has a young lady that she's dating. That's how transparent that I am. It's not something that I condone. It's not something that I'm going to endorse. But whenever you're voting for that, you're endorsing it. And as a man of color, if you look at mass incarceration is something that's plagued this country. We don't get served with the same statutes where, say, a brother gets pulled over and he's got a $5 rock in his car, and the next guy gets pulled over and he's got a half a key of cocaine in his car, and his brother's getting 20 years in prison, and this guy is getting probation. You can't honestly, truthfully sit here as a man of color and think that the judicial system is the same for us as men of color as it is for other nationalities. And when it comes down to abortion and it comes down to that, that's something that God gives us for us, a man and a woman. And it's satanic to me because it kills our authority to reproduce. That's a gift from God. So me, myself, yes, as a man of cloth, I'm not here to judge anyone because I don't have a heaven or hell to put someone in. So I understand God's grace and God's mercy, and I understand salvation, but also in the same breath and the same token, I'm not one to endorse it. I don't hate the sinner. It says the word of God says God's word is spirit and truth. So when he gave us the word, he didn't ask us for our opinion. It is what it is. It's like a double-edged sword. I'm not perfect. We all fall short, but you're not going to endorse my wrong.
Right.
So I want to chime in on that for a moment, real quick, Dr. John.
Yeah.
And then I see Robert, your hand. So I do want to say that again, I want to go back to beginnings of beginnings when we started these discussions and started the discussion, because again, politics can become very emotional, and it's the passion, that can be imputed into it. But I do want to make sure that we understand clarity as it relates to what this forum is. And we want to stay on agenda topic. So when we are discussing, again, because we all have beliefs, we all have our opinions, but we want to make sure that we have facts as much as possible and sticking to facts when we are bringing forth our information as it relates to what has happened in past, in specificity, and talking about the two candidates, and not actually because of our feelings and our beliefs. We want to try to refrain from that because, again, as a believer myself, I mean, it's definitely, we could say a lot of things, but we want to make sure that we talk about the comparison of past from them, and then we're going to move on to current. And we're actually going to move on to what we currently see after I know, John, you know, you wanted to say one other thing, but I also have been seeing
No,
these two hands
please
raised as
do.
well.
You know, James, because
Okay.
certainly, I mean, this is just, I like the fact that it's real talk. So, I mean, I can appreciate where this brother is coming from as being real talk, but you know, personally, I mean, when folks don't know my background, I'm a physician, and I know the incarceration system very well because I've been in it for over 25 years, working in and out of from the highest level penitentiaries down to the lowest level jail or small juvenile facilities. So I'm in there and working with and trying to help brothers and sisters all over the country. So I'm very much so acquainted with that. And I the only comment that I wanted to make with respect to the disparaging amount of brothers to non brothers incarcerated is that there's far more Caucasians incarcerated than there are brothers. Now, I'm saying numbers wise. Now, I'm talking fact. Numbers wise, there's far more whites incarcerated than there are brothers. But percentage wise in our race, because we only make up 12 to 13%, depending on, you know, the 340 million people that live in this country, a disproportionate number of black males. And what I equate that to is money. We're unfortunately the environments that a number of us are raised in those environmental situational, they put us in a situation where we fall short and fall into these incarceration you know, areas. But I can just tell you that as far as like numbers inside of the prisons, and there's more to be said about that, but I want to keep this on focus with what your discussion is on. I agree with you that I don't like seeing so many brothers and sisters incarcerated you know, in there, but there are far more whites and other races behind bars. We just percentage wise, you know, it's disproportionate for the numbers that we make up in the United States.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I thank you, John. And so I see Robert, I see OGM, Ferguson, and then of course Andre as well. So if that order, if you can.
All right. This is almost, I won't say an impossible topic in terms of where you start or where you finish, simply because this train is long. Where do you find the locomotive that's pulling all of this stuff that got started? So whether you're talking three strikes law, whether you go back to the time where our people couldn't even vote, and then if they could vote, they were charged a poll tax, or they were told to look in a jar and guess how many jelly beans are in a jar. Those types of discriminatory things. But without getting into all of that, my point with that is it's like trying to put a puzzle together and do it without some of the most important or most integral pieces. If we're talking about like the three strikes law specifically, and what administration that came in up under, we have to remember that that was a law. And if you are a judge or a prosecutor, there's only so much information that you were able to bring forth as it related to those particular cases. Now, in Black communities, demographically, we suffered immensely when it came to the enforcement of those laws. Blacks were looked at as drug dealers and, you know, crackheads, whereas in the suburbs, you were looked at like you had a disease. So rather than go to the penitentiary or to jail, you were sent to a rehabilitation center. It's not all politics is money and who has the money. We have to remember that there was a time where lobbyists did not have positions in the political system. But now when money got, I won't even say thrust, when money entered this equation strategically, a lot of the things that we thought would be morally and ethically and integrally done got thrown to the wayside. I tell folks on many occasions, I don't care who it is running for office, and with that being said, too, we need to not just vote presidential. We need to vote local. Who's going to be your governor? Who's going to be the assistant governor? Who's going to be your mayor? Who's going to be all of those positions, your sheriffs, your judges. So while a lot of folks are going to come out and vote this year, who else is going to come out 2 years from now? You got to change the congressional seatings, those representatives. That's where your voices are. So when we want change and we think that the presidents are doing it, they're not the shot callers. That's just the truth. They're head figures they put into a position. Think about it like this. America is a corporation, whether we want to believe it or not. And every governor is a regional CEO of that corporation that we call America. And then its subordinates thereafter, the mayors and whatever other billets get filled. So if we start holding the low-level leaders accountable, then we can start to change some of this stuff. If we just let it continue, let the status quo continue, we're going to run into even more and more problems. Exercise your voice, exercise your vote. Sit in silence as an enabler. And then we're allowing that thing that we may be.
Appreciate it. I know, but we just got to wrap it up. Thank you. Ferguson.
Hey, yeah, so from a standpoint, I look at the election from a standpoint of qualification, right? And the history of our government in any kind of business or in any kind of job, you have to work your way up, right? And what I see from Kamala Harris is, she's worked in these fields. She's been working with the legislator and governors and mayors for years. Trump don't have no qualification. So I'm looking at it from a qualification point of view. He did nothing. He didn't serve this country in any capacity. So he is not even qualified. Like it's mind-boggling that he even made first president when you look at it from qualification standpoint. And the second thing is just common decency. Yeah, I think that Project 2025 is real. I truly believe that this man is trying to take us back to the quote unquote Stone Age. Because when America was great is when Black people were slaves and we was nothing. So yes, it has everything to do with that because America was built on the backs of slaves.
Okay, we got
and
we got to wrap it up in a couple of seconds.
Okay. And from a qualification standpoint, I feel like Kamala Harris is more qualified. She is proven, and I believe Donald Trump is not proven. And from a common decency space, talking to other world leaders, I will go with Kamala Harris over Donald Trump.
Thank you so much, man. I just wanted to come in because we had to stick to some of the things, and it was like mass incarceration was mentioned, and I know that was something that a lot of people are talking about when it was like 1,500 people that was convicted and like drug cases, and it was like 45 Black when they went through it and tried to fact check that. And also there was Ray can speak to the other part about that, but not yet. And then and when you come down to talk about the third strikes rule, those are individuals. Those are individuals that have to vote in local elections, and that comes from that. When you come down to talk about the third strike rule, when she's held accountable for doing her job because she was at that time in the position to have to actually enforce it. So those types of things have to be looked at, and realistically, we're looking at what's the betterment for the whole society. We may have things that we do not agree with, and spiritual and biblically and all of that, but realistically, if we're looking at which one, there, if you're going to measure spiritually in the Bible against her, measure it against him as well, because there are characteristics that also are in the Bible that he is not demonstrating. And whether you have the ability or not, those are individuals that have to stand before God themselves, and not our society is going to be a great detriment if we do not do the right thing and look at all of those areas fairly.
Great, good. All right, so we're talking about, and thank you everybody that has already spoken, and I know there's a couple other people that definitely want to speak. And also, we're gonna move on to the current. Like, what do we see right now? What do you, and I think Ferguson had mentioned a little bit about the current. And so we are talking about current again before we move on to the past. And so I do want to give anyone opportunity to just jump in as well and talk about what do you see as the current from either side.
I think Ray had just one clarification he wanted to add.
Sure, absolutely, Ray.
The one clarification that Andre, you basically said everything that I was going to say. I was just going to add that when they did the research and looked into the incarcerations up under Kamala Harris, it was 45 individuals that were actually incarcerated directly up under her. And of those 45, it is actually undetermined how many of those were actually African American. So it wasn't 45 Black men. It's undetermined however many was Black out of those 45, where previously it was believed that it was like thousands upon thousands of people were incarcerated up under her directly. And those people that were incarcerated wasn't up under her. When it was up under her, it was only 45. And those 45, it is not known how many of those were actually African American, and that she actually developed programs for people to attend and go through that were like diversion programs, so that they wouldn't have to go to jail for nonviolent crimes. That was just my input there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Brother Dazzler. Ferguson, your hand was up from previous, right? If you could lower it, if it was, just so we can know. And if it's current, it was Dazzler if it was current.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback off of the two brothers that just got done speaking, and also in regards to current event. Mass incarceration for men and women of color is a current event. A covenant between two males or two females up under this administration is a current event. Abortion is also another current event. So when we get to talking about mass incarceration in the judicial system, and we get to talking about same-sex marriage, and we get to talking about abortion, all those are current events.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ferguson? You're on mute, Ferguson.
Ferguson, you have to unmute. Ferguson, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge current event for me. I just don't, and I'm a blood wash believer too, but I don't believe that we shouldn't take away someone else's choice, because that's the one thing that our God, whoever our God is, whoever your God is, but my God gives me free choice. So from a political standpoint, I couldn't tell a woman what to do with their body. So the fact that I believe that the Trump administration is going to do that if he's elected is very, very dangerous. One of the brothers spoke about him as being a dictator. He shows very, very dictatorship tendencies. I mean, it's blatant. It ain't tendencies, it's blatant. And again, from Kamala Harris, like one of the brothers said, she's very well spoken. And the incarceration amongst Black men is at an alarming rate. And I was one of them. But I still do not believe in taking away somebody's choice. And that's what really casted my vote, because who's to say in the next 4 years there'll be another choice that he will take away from a human? That's a dictatorship. That's what scares me. And then it's going to be another thing, and then before we know it, it's like a Hitler regime. So from that point of view, that's why my vote going to Kamala Harris.
Okay, and so again, I want to reiterate, if you will make sure that you use your Zoom tools down at the bottom of your screen for when you want to have something to say so that we can acknowledge you. And being mindful that we are doing discussions, and like I said, I appreciate when we are. That's what we're doing. We are discussing, but I want to make sure that everybody understands this is a safe space. So the emotions and the passion about our beliefs and our opinions can rise, but we want to make sure that we do stay clear as it relates to interacting and interlapping rather